It was Francis Golden who had a weekly clinic for tenants at the University Settlement House, to which I was attached as a community worker. So that a problem north of Houston Street was only slightly outside my jurisdiction, and it seemed very natural to me to look into it. I have to say, in all candor, that I ran into the problem that Charles Cook, the head worker at the university settlement, favored the project that the city was proposing. And the reason he favored it was that there was some sort of guarantee that so-and-so many apartments would be kept for so-called middle-income or lower-middle-income tenants. But as one talked with Francis and the site tenants, there was a good deal of skepticism about whether that, in fact, would be carried through. And B, why should anyone have to move off the site in which they were now living? And it was out of such sentiments that there developed the idea of an alternative plan, which I did everything in my power to promote, even though it was contrary to the perspective of my boss. Well, it seemed that something that would make the alternative plan have bite, be substantial, would be if we could find some professional city planners to advocate it. And I had spent a year at the Harvard School of Design. I went down to City Hall, and I located two city planners, one of whom was named Walter Tabbitt, and the other, I believe, Alan Shapiro. And they came up to Cooper Square and attended meetings of the site tenants and threw themselves into the project of developing an alternative plan. I mean, this was, among other things, an experiment in participatory democracy. Let the people decide. And what planners did was to give it a specific character, and that specific character involved the tenant moving on the site, not outside the site, on the site, while the particular area in which he or she lived, was rehabilitated, and then moving back into an improved situation. And what was really both hilarious and moving to me was that about 1990, that's 30 years after my involvement, I got a letter from David McReynolds of the War Resisters League, who apparently all this time has been a site tenant. And he described how in his case he was moved from the back of a building to the front of the same building, how when his apartment had been worked on, he moved back to it. Now he didn't have to turn the refrigerator off when he used another. No, this is exactly what he wrote. And so that was the basic idea, and David gives me specific evidence that it was carried out. But you see, I was only connected with it from sometime in the late 50s, 58, maybe even 59, and I then went to graduate school at Columbia, and I left in the summer of 1961 to teach at Spelman College in Atlanta with Howard Zinn. And so my participation was brief, and I think the main thing I did was to find these professional city planners who, have rather drudgerous jobs, drafting new traffic outlets and so forth, and give them this really exciting project. And I would like to say, by the way, that the 60s, unfortunately, did not produce many lasting institutions. One of them was Head Start. Another was Legal Services, which I worked for later on for almost 20 years after I became a lawyer. But I was just thinking this morning that perhaps the Cooper Square project ought to be regarded as a third thing, where people kept at it, and at least as David and others have reported it to me, they won.